What do you get when you combine a Smith Wesson end frame, the year 1917, and 6 rounds of 45 ACP? You get a party. That's what you get. Mill Serp Garage. Here we are. Another Smith & Wesson end frame. This time, it's an icon. The model 1917. This is a single action, double action revolver, chambered in 45 ACP or 45 auto rim. 6-round capacity, counterclockwise cylinder rotation. It's got a 5.5-inch barrel built on a 5-screw pinned barrel Smith & Wesson end frame. Pretty new at the time. The end frame was the largest Smith & Wesson frame made at the time. And you remember we had the Model 25. Last video I did. I bought this Model 25. I wanted a Smith & Wesson chambered in 45 ACP. Turns out that thing had a surprise up its sleeve. It was chambered in 45 long Colt. I still fell in love with it, liked it, but still wanted Smith & Wesson revolver chambered in 45 ACP. And I figured, you know what, I'm not gonna make that mistake twice. I'm gonna go out finally. I had always been looking for one of these. And I was like, I'm just gonna find a 1917. You know, you could go for the Colt or you can go for the Smith & Wesson. Colt and Smith & Wesson both made these under military contract when the United States entered World War I. So you could go with either one. I'm not going to take sides. I'm just going to say I went with the Smith & Wesson. And you can easily settle the decision on which one to get by just getting one of each, which I don't know, who knows, maybe one day down the road I'll actually do that, but definitely decided to get the Smith & Wesson first. And pretty happy with the purchase. Got it for a little bit of a cheaper price because of some corrosion that's going on down here by the wood. And these grips are aftermarket wood grips. They are aftermarket that follows the exact design and dimensions of the originals, which is cool. They appear to be original, but they are replacements. I'm thinking this got wet at some point. And the grips, kind of the wetness from the grips corroded this area down here a bit. And looks like it's almost to the point where I need to give it some attention. But for right now, it seems to be conserved, let's say. And the rust appears to be halted. But definitely some bluing damage. Hey, it made me get this one for a pretty decent price, so I'm not complaining. So, yeah, let's get into the history. I'm going to touch a little bit on the origins of this guy. So, we've gone back before. We've looked in books. Here, we'll take a quick peek. I'll show you in the Jinx book here, History of Smith & Wesson. This is a great book. You got to get one of these. And if we just go back to the end frame, the start of the end frame saga starts with this 44 hand ejector. First model. There were a few, like four of them, I think, 4 incarnations. For our purposes, we're just going to really be dealing with the first and second models of the hand ejector, the 44 hand ejector. And of course, it was 44 special, 44 Russian round, and it was basically like a older black powder round originally, like, wasn't it? A black powder cartridge. And when you see 44, they're not talking about like the Dirty Harry 44. They're talking about some old school 44 special. This was the first model hand ejector. But basically, you want to go and do a bunch of, the 44 hand ejector research, go on ahead. But for our purposes, the 44 hand ejector first model was introduced on the brand new end frame in 1908. It hit the streets. And that was replaced with the 44 hand ejector second model in 1915. And that was without the shrouded ejector rod. And it didn't have this triple locking system that the first model had. It was just cost prohibitive. It was just a complicated design, and I guess it was just difficult for Smith and Wesson to make money with those. So they simplified things to make so it wasn't so costly to produce. They were available. This second model was available blued or nickel plated, 4-inch, 5-inch, 6.5-inch barrels with fixed sights. There was a 6.5-inch barrel target model. You had some options there or whatever. The standard caliber again was 44 Smith and Wesson Special, but it was also available in 38-40, 44-40, and 45 Colt. Of course, the 45 Colt is the only one still to this day that still exists out of those. And these were made until October 22nd, 1917. And that's when everything stopped and they began production for World War I. But during that period, when they were making this second model, a version called the 455 hand ejector was built. It was being produced for England. It was chambered for the 455 Mark II British pistol cartridge. And that was starting in late 1914 into 1915. The guns were in the first model configuration at first from 14 to 15. And then in June 1915, they were in the second model configuration. These were the ones for England. And the production stopped on those September 14th, 1916. It's kind of cool how Smith & Wesson kept these dates, like right to the day. And that's when we stopped production making those for England. So that's a whole other collector niche in itself right there, these 455 hand ejectors. But why that's important for this story is because when war was looming for us in 1916, Smith & Wesson, they had been working with Springfield Armory, and they developed a 45 hand ejector. They had sights on marketing this to the military, and we were on the horizon of like entering the war ourselves, so they used this model that they were building with this 455 Mark II cartridge for England. They said, well, we could rework this for the 45 ACP and we could use that. They invented Joseph Wesson, actually, it's Dan Wesson's son, invented the moon clips that, I showed you in my last video, this tremendous amount of clips. We'll get to that in a little bit. But these moon clips were invented way back in the day, way back then, because you could not have a cartridge that didn't have a rim. It was a rimless cartridge. How would you work that with a revolver? And again, realistic snap caps are what I use right here. I just don't want anybody thinking I'm chambering rounds here in the Milsurp garage. These are the realistic snap caps that I use. They are completely inert primers, no powder in here, nothing. They are real weight, real feel, real everything to real ammunition, but absolutely zero chance of anything detonating. If you want to get a set of these things, I got the 45 ACP guys right here. We got the 45 Colts. We got everything. They have all kinds of calibers. Check them out. And use coupon code, one word, Milsurp Garage for 10% off your order. So in order for these things to work in a revolver, the headspace against, if you look in there, can we see it? So I tried to do this with the Model 25 and it was a little bit of a pain in the neck. But if you see in there, you can see it a little bit better with this guy. You could see where they headspace in there, that they're actually inside there is cut headspacing, a spot where the cartridge will literally headspace right up against this edge right here. Otherwise, see, you could tell it's not like it's stopping from the rim. If I turn this around, it'll go right in this way. See what I'm saying? So it's not, the rim isn't stopping it. It's actually head spacing on that shoulder in the cylinder against the brass right here, edge of the brass. And if you just put these in here like that, fine, you could do that where it head spaces like that, and you'd be able to close it, you'd be able to fire. But now when the brass fire forms, here's the problem. The problem is that how is the ejector rod going to work? Because the ejector rod would normally catch on the rim. So that 45 auto rim that I mentioned, that's something that was invented, a cartridge that came out around 1920, and I think Peters invented it. Peters is an interesting company there too. They were bought up by Remington in the early 30s, but in the 20s, 1920, they were still their own company. They're really interesting. They were the ones that first came out with these, see how these say Peters papers, but it's actually Remington marked on it. These are modern, but Peters back then, they had paper shotgun cartridges, and Remington bought that company, and even still to this day, make paper shotgun cartridges. I always loved that Peters company. It's an interesting history lesson there too. They've had some explosions at their factories back in their day, a lot of drama. But they're the ones that invented the auto rim to be like, hey, why don't we just make a 45 round that has a rim for these revolvers? And I think there's still a couple of like these legendary ammo companies out there that's manufacture it. The real answer is, see, they'll just dump out if you didn't fire form them, or if you want to shoot and then use like a wooden dowel to pop out the brass, you could do that too. No harm, no foul. It will work just fine like that. But what was invented, better to use this one because that's like kind of like a modern one. For this gun, actually, they were half moons. I don't have half moons. I have these full moon clips. They're called moon clips because they were shaped. They were three. It was 3 and 3, so they were shaped like the moon. But I don't have a 3 and 3. I only have these full ones, and I have these deuces, these like side by sides that are kind of interesting, that pop in here like that. These were not the original ones that were used, but with these, as you see, if you drop this in here, the ejector can now actuate on the moon clip itself to pop out your empties. You know, this is what it would look like, obviously, after a round of shooting. That's what you would pop out. We'll take a look later. I'll show you what came with my, believe it or not, you know, I didn't get any of those moon clips with this guy, but with the Model 25 that I bought, supposedly it was just unfired. Like a guy bought it and it just sat in his safe and he never used it for all those years. It was a 77, I think that one was. And when the guy sold it, he sold it with a load of moon clips, but never used the gun. So just, I don't think the guy ever knew that it was in 45 Colt. I mean, who knows? That's the going story that I got. But and I never even ran that gun through the getting those Smith Wesson letter to see like how it was originally configured. Maybe it originally was configured in 45 ACP, and he swapped out the cylinder and then forgot that he swapped it out and still sold it with all the moon clips. I mean, I don't know. I should get a letter on that gun. I really should. But anyway, okay, where were we? The moon clips. Yeah, well, let's just get back to, we'll take a look at all the moon clips I have and the tools and that stuff in a little bit. Let's just slide back into the history. So where were we? Yeah, so we were at Smith & Wesson developing in 1916, working with Springfield Armory, developing a 45 hand ejector, 45 ACP hand ejector, to work with these moon clips. And that was the invention that they allowed Colt. So you've heard that they because of wartime, they didn't hold Colt to that patent and say, hey, you can't use that. It was a patent that they developed, but they did allow it to be used by Colt because, it wasn't a time back then to be like, hey, that's ours, pay us. You know what I mean? It was like, it was, wartime. So they allowed that. So the U.S. declared war April 2nd, 1917, and entered World War One. And Smith and Wesson started cranking these things out immediately on what the Smith and Wesson workers called the government model. So as much as you would think the 1911 would be called the government model, it was really this is what they were calling the government model, like Smith and Wesson guys. I don't think Colt workers referred to the 1911. It was, I think they called it the model 1911. Even though it said government model on it, this was more known for that from the workers. And the issue is that they just really did not have enough 1911s. You know what I mean? So they needed all the armor that they could get, all the guns, everything. So the first completed ones were September 6th, 1917. This seems like it was taking a long time, right? And I guess the government kind of felt that way. And the production, being that it wasn't fast enough for the government, they stepped in on September 13th, 1918. And this is a little weird. I'd love to research this some more and really see like what the rules are governing this, because they stepped in on September 13th, 1918, and took control of Smith and Wesson, and they managed the company for the duration of the war. And that's a big thing because Smith and Wesson was around for a long time, and they were a big company, a family-owned company, and it was the first time in history that it wasn't administered by the Wesson family, And I guess, during wartime, there's a lot of special rules that kick in, you know what I mean? And the government stepping in definitely got things moving too, because just a little production note that I have here is that they rose from 5,000 units a month to 14,500 a month during that period. And I'd love to know, this is an early one. This serial number dates it to 1918, but it would be early 1918. And this is a pretty early one in production. And I'm trying to get some numbers together to really see, like, was this part of when Smith and Wesson was making them, or like, I don't think so. I think government might have stepped in real early. And it would just kind of be interesting to know, is this one produced during the government running the company or during when Smith and Wesson was running it? 163,476 hand ejector models of 1917 were produced during World War One. There's all kind of different production numbers on these because when World War One ended, they had parts left over, so they came out with some of them commercially. Like after the war, they sold off ones that they had the parts made for, and it took till January 5th, 21, till all those parts were gone. The war had been over for years, and then they kept production going with a commercial model. And you could tell the commercial model right away because it has these checkered grips. And it always had kind of like so-so sales. It wasn't like the greatest sales for these things. Supposedly, shooters didn't really like them because they were light. Like they didn't have a target barrel. They had this like kind of thin barrel, and they were like a light feeling gun because it's true. Like compared to the Model 25 here, right? I mean, you definitely see a marked difference. And this is like what the customers were more used to for Smith and Wesson, and these to them were just a little bit lightweight, let's say. You know what I mean? And they didn't really do so great. But that's why the changes later on came. I mean, we'll get to that. There was, the 45 hand ejector of 1950 Target model was the change to look more like that. And then in 1953, that model came out in 45 Colt. And then the 45 hand ejector of 1955 came out in 1955. And in 1957, that gun became named the Model 25. And there you go. That's how we got to that one. So could have started a video with this one and then moved into the Model 25. We're going a little bit backwards, but I like to go backwards. That's how I like to do it. I like to go backwards. So just a couple of other little notes here. We're jumping like ahead into like well after the war. But in 1937, it's just for collectors. This matters. If you're looking for one of these, you might run into these because they made a lot of them. In 1937, there was a Brazilian contract. Brazil ordered a bunch of them, and they came in like two separate batches, whatever. There's a lot of history for that too, but there's about 25,000 of them. They were delivered from February to October of 1938, and they had a Brazilian seal and a Brazilian seal on the side plate. Those are another little collector niche in these things. I think I've read where they're a little bit cheaper. So if you're looking for one of these and they're a little price, they're a little pricey for you, whatever. Maybe one of those Brazilian ones, they're the same exact thing. You know what I mean? Just have a Brazilian crest on it. Maybe a couple of other little changes that Brazil wanted. I think they have a serrated trigger. Like this one has a smooth trigger. I think the Brazilian ones have the serrated trigger. A couple of little differences, And so that's the history. One thing I'll touch on with these also is that there's these old ones. The originals, when they first started coming out, they're rare. So it's one of these things that like collectors look for. So I figured I'd mention it in case you're out there looking around for one of them. These really early ones have these serrations on the side of the hammer. And there's a couple of different explanations as to what that's even for. You could do your reading on your own to find out. I wouldn't be able to tell which one I think is real by just looking at that. But there's that, and also on the grips, there was a scallop right over here. That scallop, if you see that on the grips, denotes the earlier models, the earlier ones. Serial number locations. I definitely want to cover that. So there's 5 spots where you're going to find the serial number. On the butt, on the cylinder face, on the barrel flat, on the yoke facing the cylinder, and on the back of the extractor star. So if you want to look like a real, like you really know what you're doing when you pick one of these up, just remember where those 5 numbers should be. So let's cover it. So it would be on the butt. First thing you do, look at the butt. We're going to see this one's a little rusted out, but so we have U.S. Army Model 1917. Got the lanyard ring, of course. Those are really cool. It's in my way. And then number. Then we have the numbers. So this one we have 2 numbers over 3 numbers on the bottom here. Oh wait, there you go. I could just get the shine going and then you'd be able to read it. So that's where you're going to find your first serial number. That's the number now that's going to have to match. Number 1, the cylinder face. So we open up the cylinder. We take a look at the side. We rotate around till we see a number. Am I going to have to zoom? Nope, there it is. Oops, I'm bumping into you, sorry. There it is right here. Do we have enough light? Should we zoom more? I'm going to zoom. Yeah, so we can do that. Right here. Awfully small, but there it is. And then the barrel flat. So we turn it upside down. And we go right here on the barrel flat. So far we're matching too, which is cool. The yoke facing the cylinder. This is a tough one. You're going to get in here. Get my light. This one might not be visible I could tell you where it is, but I don't know if we're going to see it. But let's take a look. Let's see if we could get in there somehow. I didn't rehearse how to find it. Let's try it maybe from here. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to get in there. I'd have to zoom really tight too. But it's basically, I'll show you where it is. It's going to be right in here on this face, right here, facing the cylinder. And you can see it if it's light enough, if you have the light just right, and you look in there, you can see it. And this one has it. And then the last one is on the back of the extractor star. And yeah, it's in there. It is in there. This is going to be another one that I don't know if we're going to be able to see. But it's right back there. You could see some of it. I could see the impressions of it. It's back there. And they all match on this one. That's the thing. I saw this rust and I knew these grips weren't right. But I'm like, the important things are there. The matching was kind of important to me, especially with a revolver. Because a Smith Wesson revolver, they're really built like tight. So, you want the original parts. You know what I mean? There's also a soft fitting number, they call it. It's like a build number. It's a number that's on it even before it actually gets imprinted with the serial number. So, like what they do is start making the gun, and they might make it and fit it, and then they start opening it up and taking it apart to do things, or to make other things, to put stuff in the frame. And they want to make sure that they don't mix up this with the frame with the side plate. So there's what they call a soft number. So you can see it. It's right there. That S means something too. They throw around this S a lot when you read about it. This is supposed to be like an S with a number over here. It's a little spot of rust there, so I can't really be sure because it's so tiny. Can't really be sure if it wasn't there. But there's all these places where there's supposed to be like an S with a number, and I don't have that. This is like an early one, so it doesn't have that. But it does have the soft build number here, and it's also here. See it? So you have it on this on the frame, and it'll also be, when you take the side plate off, it'll be on the other side of the side plate. And I did have this off when I cleaned it all out, and it did have the same build, that same build number. So these early issues from like serial number 1 to 42,000, that's the number that I'm coming up with. It's kind of like a ballpark number, but they're going to have a GHS marking on the left side by the hammer for the inspector mark. Gilbert H. Stewart. It's like a G, an H inside of it, and an S wrapped around the H. Kind of cool symbol, right? That is a flaming bomb later on. And then after that, it was like an eagle head with a number. So this is how you could date, like, basically, you could use that to find 3 different types, 3 different eras of them just by this inspector mark. But those early ones, that was the inspector's name, Gilbert H. Stewart. It was used by John Dillinger. It's supposedly in some museum somewhere. I was looking to see if I could find a picture of the gun. I came up with this. I don't think this is it. It's all engraved. I don't know what the hell. It says something on it about bank robbery, but I don't know. I don't think that's the one. But supposedly it was the gun used by Dillinger prolifically, It has a forged round blade front sight, a notch rear sight, and and the lanyard ring. That was the last thing I had written down, lanyard ring. So what did I get with mine? Let's see, I'll show you. Let me get this out. Show you what these tools do. So when I bought the 25, this was, right? It came with some tools. So it came with this from TK Custom. These two tools. Another tool like this, but basically it's the same thing as this thing. So we'll just toss that on the side, and kind of like, again, this has the same basic shape, same function as this, but in a small little pocket one you could throw in your pocket if you wanted to, or hang on something like on the edge of your like a range bag or something like that. But these are like the real nice professional ones that we'll stick with for now. All of these came with that Model 25. That's crazy, right? Guy had a lot of them. I don't know what the hell he was doing. There's also these TK Custom ones that look like this. They're kind of wild. They're like very thin, kind of like modern-y kind of ones. And these doubles, like I showed you, there's like a bag of these doubles. And get rid of those, and we'll just put a few of these out here. Yeah, this guy with the sale included a whole bunch of these things with the wrong gun. I mean, like I said, this wasn't the guy that I bought this from. It was the guy that I bought the Model 25 from. So, how do these things work? Well, you could just struggle with it and push the rounds in by hand. These things are kind of sharp, kind of hurts your hand. These things really do work good. You know, a lot of times these gimmicky looking tools, they're not so great. Let me tell you, this thing is awesome. Wait, I hope I get it right, because I haven't used this thing in a long time. Does it go on that way, or does it go on? It would go on, I guess, this way, because with these, there's like kind of like a smooth rounded side and a sharp edged side. You can see it, right? So that's kind of like the smooth rounded side. I would imagine that they're supposed to be like this. So that would go down, put it on here. Now each individual round, you can see there's like a dimple in here. Each individual round would be nice. I wonder if they had something like this for the, back in the early 1900s for the guys to use. And you just slide each one in here. And this just clicks them into place, nice and easy. I think it'd probably be easier if I went around the circle the other way, right? Where are the other ones? What happened to my other snap caps? Oh, they're right underneath me. Yeah, it'd probably be easier to go this way, right? It would make more sense. Boom. You get the idea. That really takes no effort at all, and they go in there nice. So this tool is pretty cool. And then when you're done, when you shoot it out, and again, it's kind of cool how it just plops in there. It's like automatic speed loaders. It is pretty cool to, like the speed loaders, like the ones that like look like this. These things can be a pain in the neck sometimes. You ever mess with these things where they get caught on the grip, they get stuck on this, then you got to turn it, the rounds fall out weird. They're not a perfect system. Those things, they kind of suck. With these, it all just stays together. Like you're just dropping the whole thing in here. It's not like with the speed loader where you have to like turn a thing and have the rounds drop out. Just the whole thing, you could just throw these in your pocket, keep them like this, and let me tell you, these rounds are not falling out of here, no matter what, in your pocket or anywhere. And then you just slap them right in here. And when you're done, you don't have to save, if you're in a firefight, you don't have to save this thing. You just kick it out onto the floor and throw another one of these in here. But these, when you're done, that's where this tool comes in. So this tool, hope I don't screw this up. So this just goes right in over it, and you just turn. And you just pop them out. Because it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to get these things out of here. I'm telling you, you're going to struggle. But look how cool that is. Just boom, boom. Ain't nothing. Boom. They just, the last one is hard because there's nothing to hold on to. And that's how easy it is to get them off with this tool. And these TK custom ones that look like this is what, see, it's like a modern, thin kind of one. Like they felt like they needed to modernize it somehow. It kind of does end up not fitting. Why isn't it going in there? That's weird. Yeah, look at that. A little bit of a fitment issue right there. Never noticed that before. I used these before. I didn't notice that. That's a little odd. Definitely like a closer tolerance. But I do notice that because they're a little thinner, kind of like might rub a little bit less, you know. And yeah, so you can get even modern ones if you wanted to. Again, the military ones were half moon clips, you know, and I don't have any of those. Those are the ones that I don't have, unfortunately. But you could play with this gun. That's what's kind of cool. It has like these are you got to admit these are cool to just toss in your pocket. And yeah, look, these are, they don't have the problem that those other ones had. These just drop right in. They're loose, you know. Nice. It's also kind of cool to unload it, right? Like if you're taking it out of the holster and you want to unload it, you're just dropping this one thing out, boom, you're done just like that. You don't have like a loose pile of rounds, you know. We got patents. Of course, we're gonna have patents. Let's check out some patents. So we got this one right here. This is Joseph Wesson, again, the son of Dan Wesson. This is a patent from 1903. This is number 743, 784, and this is a cool patent to read. You want to get into these things. This is about the application filing for a revolving firearm. And it's basically the ejector rod and the ejector star and a couple of other parts. There's a few different patents like there for revolvers for Smith & Wesson, as you could imagine. But these are the ones that are important for, like, let's say, for just studying this particular guy. If you just want to get your feet wet, I would also check in 1906, 811807, again by Joseph Wesson. This is basically what they call the rebounding mechanism. Think that there were some revolver hammer designs that were similar to this, but there's something about this one. You notice when you pull the trigger on like a Smith & Wesson revolver, right? What they call it rebounding is when you pull the trigger, it goes down to there. Then when you let go, it backs off a little bit. See how it? So if it gets hit, it's not. It doesn't. You don't drop it right here and it just fires. You know, it's a mechanism where only when the trigger is pulled does it fall all the way through. You can see the firing pin sticking through right there, right? See how it'll only stick through when you got the trigger squeezed all the way, and everything's tight. And when you let go, stuff loosens up a bit, and the trigger and the hammer isn't able to contact. So that's called a rebounding mechanism. If you look at the text, it'll say the invention relates to firearms, the object thereof to provide an improved construction of so-called rebounding mechanism, but in this case more properly termed a retracting device for the hammer, insomuch as a positively moved device is interposed at the proper time between the hammer and the frame to retract the nose of the hammer from the position it occupies at the moment of firing, and which serves as a positive block for the hammer to prevent the latter from being accidentally brought in contact with the primer of a cartridge in the cylinder by some accidental blow. So this is the guy that invented this, Joseph Wesson. I'm sure his dad was instrumental, and like his son got the patent. But there you go. And then this is the big one. This is the one that you have to definitely, if you're into this gun, print out the whole thing and read, because this guy is 1181417, and it is for this whole system with moon clips and other stuff, the ejector rod itself and a few other parts. This text, I read this whole one. It's really cool. It's of of course, it's in that like patent type jargon. So you have to really kind of get a feel for how that's written, like that sentence that I just gave you, and how crazy that sounds. Um, but you start to, like, after a while, be able to, in your head, you're putting together what they're talking about. You know what I mean? Because they're very descriptive with these patents. They have to be very, very descriptive on. With a patent, you're not making something that doesn't exist. You just have your specific way of doing it has to meet certain criteria for you to get a patent. It has to be like separated enough, has to be enough of a difference from what's already out there for them to grant a patent. So that's written certain ways where once you get used to reading them, it's pretty cool. So shooting this thing, what can I say? It's like a dream come true. I loved 45 ACP, and I love Smith and Wesson revolvers. And to have a combination, even if it was a Colt, I would say I love Colt revolvers. I mean, I have plenty of both of them, and either or, whichever one this was, I'd love it. I was drawn towards the Smith and Wesson one here. Every time I would see these things, it was always the Smith and Wesson that I kind of took a shine to more than the Colt. But I would love to own both. The 45 ACP, being able to fire that out of a revolver is like, it's like a perfect combination for me. It's like my favorite round out of a favorite design. It's kind of like these things that you never thought would come together. It kind of reminds me of the Kunin, you know, but the Kunin's like the other way around because it's 357 out of a 1911, right? So this is kind of like a yin yang with the Kunin, kind of, you know. So instead of it being a rimmed pistol cartridge that's like that's powerful, that you're firing out of a 1911 design that you love, which you never thought those two things would be able to come together. A 357 Magnum and a 1911 design you wouldn't think would come together. Well, you just kind of would never think that they would be able to overcome the obstacles to get a rimless 45 ACP cartridge out of a revolver, but they certainly did. And, thanks to that moon clip invention, it's such a simple thing to come up with just a clip like that. You know, like I don't know if I would be able to put that together. When you look at that, you just like, oh, what a rudimentary, like, you know, any kid that knows how to build a go-kart would have been able to come up with that, like just a clip that you clip the rounds into that the ejector catches on or whatever. But if you really look at that, you'd be like, I wouldn't even, I would think you can't mess around and put something between the rim of the cartridge and the face of the cylinder and the frame. You know what I mean? I think that, you know, every time a round would go off, that it would get squashed or bent, or it would just be in a compromising position and screw something up. I'll tell you, it works awesome. Those things come in and out. Nothing gets stuck. Nothing gets wacky. Nothing gets bent. It's works perfectly. It really does. It improves the way a revolver works. It's amazing. You know, sometimes like when the rounds get fire formed, it's not easy even to eject all of them. You press the ejector and one or two of them still get stuck. You got to pull them out by hand. But with this, it doesn't do that. Right? When you hit the ejector rod, it pushes out because it has that plate that carries them all with it. The clip, the moon clip, it takes them all right out of there, like in one shot, every single time. It actually improves the way a revolver works. In other words, it would be pretty cool to be able to use a clip like that, even if you were using a 38 or a 357. It's even faster than a speed loader. And this was 1917. They're coming out with this. And this is like, they're coming out with speed loaders later on. And this is speedier than a speed loader. Strange as it is that I'm firing the oldest revolver that I own, and it feels like it's the furthest advanced as far as how it operates, right? That's kind of weird, but that's kind of like how it was. So now I have I have the best of both worlds now, because the um, the Model 25 turned out to be in 45 Colt. It's a little bit of a surprise, but if this thing was in 45 ACP, I think it might have taken longer for me to end up with one of these 1917. So because this happened, I was like, oh, maybe that's meant to be. Now I got a revolver in 45 Colt. And if you notice, I've never brought a single action gun out here onto the table here in the Millsop garage. Single action, I don't know. It's not for me. I don't know, like, right? Like a single action Colt, like one of those old Colts would be cool, right? It's just, I don't know. I never got one. I've looked at the Ruger ones before. They're just not my thing. I just don't really. I'm just not interested. Yet. I'll put a yet in there. And so the 45 Colt, it's kind of nice to have, a more modern revolver, just a regular double action, single action revolver in 45 Colt. So I'm glad that happened, and I'm also glad that it happened because it finally just lit a fire where I'm like, you know what? Just to be sure, I'm going to get one in 45 ACP. I'm just getting a 1917, and I'll show you. Let's take a little bit of a closer look. I'll show you what I got going on here. Let's in total transparency. Let's get in here. So I'll take these off. See, I think they would have some kind of serial number back here or a pencil number. These are definitely aftermarket. You can just tell by just the condition of them. You know what I mean? That they're this clean. Gun is not that clean. And then you say, well, maybe somebody bought, like replacements that are originals, but I don't think so. They'd have a number stamped in it or something written, or you'd be able to tell. But yeah, that was it's not totally corroded, but you could see that there was some kind of damage done down here. And I could have sworn something was written down here that I wanted to show you, but no, I'm not exactly seeing it. A couple of things. Is that one of those S somethings down over there? Something like that. Yeah, so that's what I was confronted with here when I got it, was this bit of corrosion here around the grips, where I feel that the originals might have taken on some water, soaked it up a little bit. Maybe it sat and the owner didn't know it was wet, like something like that happened. And it caused this little bit of corrosion down here, which I'd rather not reblue if I can help it. So I think I'm just going to stick with it like this. It's going to deal with the little bit of character that it has down here. Let's put it that way. And what a beautiful revolver. And yeah, you saw shooting it smooth as can be. Right? Doesn't that just look beautiful? Doesn't that just look like fun? 45 is a perfect revolver cartridge. It really is. Doesn't have the thunder of the 44 Magnum that you have that anticipation when you're pulling the trigger. But it isn't a one of these super mild pistol cartridges either. It's like perfectly right in the middle, where it's got some wallop, but doesn't scare you every time you go in to pull the trigger. Less flinching, you know what I mean? And but it feels kind of cool to feel the whole power of the 45 ACP, instead of it always being in a semi-automatic where the action is always soaking up a little of it. It kind of feels nice to feel that punch in the shoulder that the 45 is giving you in a fixed revolver. Feels nice. Feels nice. That's it. So I think that's a nice back-to-back right there. Two nice Smith & Wessons for you guys. I always like to mix it up a little bit. We've been out of revolver land for quite a while. So hope you enjoyed. Again, this is one of those things. It's kind of like how the Mini 14 was. I know there's a lot of collectors of these things that are listening to me, and they're like, oh, this guy doesn't know anything. I don't. I really don't know the crazy history of these things. I stepped into it 6-8 months ago, and really started like doing my research, and then did a lot of crunching just for the video. So yeah, of course. I mean, I'm just getting up to speed now, and I'm sure there's plenty of you that are worlds ahead. But please, my advice is use the comments. You got some cool information, something that could add on a little, a tidbit that I should have added on to something that I said, or something I got wrong, something that can connect two of the things that I put out there or whatever. Go ahead, feel free to comment. That's what I love about YouTube is the comments where we could all discuss and learn after the video. And that's it. I'm out, ladies and gentlemen. I don't even know what's coming next. Got a little bit of a schedule going there where I'm actually trying to schedule that out on paper and see, but be honest with you, it's going to be a surprise to me too because I forgot what's even on there. But guaranteed, it's not going to be long. We're going to see you, and we're going to have some more fun. Thanks for visiting the Milsurp Garage. Y'all take care.